Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливая лик, поцелуй на шее. Капли тамбана, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, степь многоярд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливая лик, поцелуй на шее. Капли тамбана, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, степь многоярд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Эти понты покупались во рту, твои мозги затупились к утру. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливая лик, поцелуй на шее. Капли тамбана, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, степь многоярд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливая лик, поцелуй на шее. Капли тамбана, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, степь многоярд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливая лик, поцелуй на шее. Капли тамбана, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, степь многоярд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливая лик, поцелуй на шее. Капли тамбана, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, степь многоярд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя.
Something I wanted to play here. I wanted to show you, take you back a year ago this month and show some remarks that you made at the UN about why this special military operation is happening and specifically the denazification of Ukraine.
And give the floor to the representative of the Russian who has asked to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to respond to the statement of Ms. Sherman. I won't comment on the part about your participation in the negotiations. Of course, you're very well informed about this, much better so than I or my colleagues are, but because the negotiations did not succeed, then perhaps you fell short in some way in this area, and perhaps you should have worked better and should have proposed more, made more serious proposals, but now we are where we are. And I'd like to comment on your words regarding Nazism in Ukraine. It has already become a common excuse when people say that the Ukrainian president is Jewish, so he can't be a Nazi. I won't try to convince you of the opposite. I'll just cite some facts. What do you think? You know who Stepan Bandera was and Roman Chuhevich. You know how many things these people did that were harmful, that were bad for humanity. These were people who collaborated with Nazis, who took part in the killings of Poles, of Jews, of Russians, of Ukrainians. And if you have any doubts, ask the Polish people about this, not Polish politicians, but the ordinary people. I've worked in Poland for 3 years, and I'm very well aware of how they view Bandera there. Well, Bandera and Shushevich are national heroes of Ukraine. And the national battalions in their insignia have Nazi symbols. Recently, NATO had to delete a portrait of a Ukrainian woman from its official page because there was a Nazi symbol on her uniform. Of course, it doesn't mean anything if you just have these symbols. Of course, it doesn't mean anything if your military tortures people and brands military Nazi symbols on their bodies. You don't consider that to be Nazism. And if the president of a country considers the national hero of a country to be someone who fought alongside Hitler, killing Jews, Poles, Russians, and Ukrainians, well, apparently from your point of view, this doesn't mean anything as well, but we see things otherwise, and so do the majority of the people in Russia and Ukraine. Thank you.
I think the representatives
Yeah, I
of the
remember
Russian
this.
Federation for their statement.
Remember this meeting.
Yes, go ahead, Ambassador.
I remember this meeting was quite a long time ago, and this was Wendy Sherman trying to reproach to us that they had all the solutions at hand during this alleged discussions of our security concerns, and it was our choice. That's the slogan of our American colleagues right now. It's Putin's war of choice, and it's not true. We try to give facts that we had no choice to stop this war in Donbass, which started in 2014. I wanted to refer also to this paradigm: President Jew can't be a Nazi, which happened to be repeated after that. And I will also wanted you to follow one person. He is the head of Ukrainian Jewish Committee. It's Edward Dolinsky. I don't know him personally, but I admire his courage even now. So he just every day for many years, I think for 5 years, maybe even more, he has been documenting the heroization of Nazi collaborators in Ukraine in his Twitter. It's not about Bandera, it's not about Shushevich. Bandera and Shushevich are very medialized personalities. He is documenting all these small commanders, criminals who were committing concrete crimes, atrocities, killing Jews, because he's a Jew, he has a Jewish committee. And he's just reporting that there was a ceremony in the memory of this or that personality who is known for killing this number of Jews there and there. There is a monument open to this. There's a ceremony. And it's really very, very shocking chronicle that he has in his account. I know that he's very much threatened in Ukraine for this, but he does his job, I think, quite well. And if you follow him, you will see the real dimension of this heroization of Nazi collaborators. It's not about Bandera, it's not about Shushevich. It's about rank and file Nazis, about rank and file criminals who have their hands in blood of innocent people, innocent Jews, Russians, Poles, whoever. So this is also a dimension that we shouldn't forget, and this is even more important than having Bandera and Shushevich as national heroes of Ukraine.
I agree. And I have 2 burning questions that I've been dying to ask you.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to get your perspective on this. Why is it that at the Nuremberg trials after World War II, no Ukrainians were prosecuted or charged? It was only Germans. Do you have a theory?
Well, it's really a question that very many people are asking. And I think we need to go back there and to understand the real atmosphere of this trial. Of course, it was not as easy as people would imagine right now. And we know that at this moment, the United States were already having other plans for these Nazi collaborators and also for Nazi criminals as well. I don't think it's a secret that a lot of Nazi German scientists, for example. They were taken to the West and they were continuing their works, and they contributed a lot to the creation of weapons of mass destruction in the United States. I think it's an open secret. Of course, they were trying to shield all these people. And of course, we had to, I imagine, I don't know the details, but I imagine that my colleagues from the Soviet side, they had to find kind of a compromise. But these Waffen-SS, for example, the divisions that were created in several places from Nazi collaborators in Baltic states, in Ukraine, they were in the decisions of Nazi tribunal, of Nuremberg tribunal. So they were not personally, but I would say as a regiment, they were condemned. And that's why that's something that we always point out to our Baltic neighbors, who are very keen to bring back these historic times when Waffen-SS were running parade in their countries.
It amazes me that only 22 were successfully prosecuted at Nuremberg. Kind of makes me think it was a show trial. But that's just my opinion. My second question for you on that, before I hand the ball to Rick, is, obviously this Ukrainian nationalism was a cancer that the Soviet Union was trying to deal with for its entire history. And I've heard a lot of theories as to why it wasn't dealt with. Why didn't Stalin deal with it? Why didn't Khrushchev deal with it? Why didn't Brezhnev deal with it? Do you have a theory, or can you give us some insight on that? Why it was continuing to fester and grow?
I don't think there is a single answer to this. I know that after the end of the war, there were a lot of efforts to do away with the movement, the partisan movement of Nazi collaborators, which was still in the west of Ukraine. I heard very tremendous figures of like 40,000 Soviet military that died during this campaign, which continued for several years.
Yes.
And we also know that United States tried to kind of interfere there and to bring some agents, Ukrainian agents, to bring there and to help this insurgency succeed, but it didn't. They were all either eradicated, but a lot of them was incarcerated. They were put in prison. And then, of course, comes Khrushchev's position, who was very sympathetic to Ukrainians, who was considering himself to be a Ukrainian, but in the Soviet Ukrainian way, of course. And he made two things that he is very notorious for. One thing is amnesty for all these Bandera collaborators. I think a lot of them, tens of thousands, were released on parole, and they were, of course, promising that they will change, but we know how it happens. And they contributed a lot, returning back to this to their own lands or going to Siberia. Some of them were not allowed to come there, but still they were they came there afterwards. They were contributing to this to this substance which gave this product in our days. And the second decision of Khrushchev was also to give Crimea as a present. Yes, I think in 1956, which was not really something that people felt in Soviet Union, because it didn't matter where you live. People from Crimea, they still had Moscow as their capital, and they had no problems in speaking Russian. So they didn't realize very much that administratively now they are reporting to Kiev. They are supposed to report to Kiev. It was the situation in elsewhere. For example, in Georgia, there were no ethnic conflicts between Abkhazians and Georgians, because Abkhazia was autonomous, but Abkhazians had Moscow as capital. At the moment when independence came and when the Georgians decided to strip Abkhazia of its independence, of its autonomous status, then the problems began. At the moment of the Soviet Union, there were no problems. Like Nagorno-Karabakh, same thing. Autonomous republic, but in Azerbaijan, but they had Moscow as capital. With independence, everything looked in a different way, and the same about Crimea. So Crimeans, the ethnic Russians, 100% ethnic Russians who didn't even hear about Ukrainian language, all of a sudden became citizens of Ukraine, and nobody asked their opinion, by the way. whether they wanted this or not. They were just given as a present to Ukraine.
Speaking of Crimea, I'm sure you saw the story of the NBC News reporter who went to Crimea, as Ukraine says he was there illegally. But, he just talked to people on the street, and all of them said, if Ukraine invades us, they will find a rifle behind every blade of grass and a gun in the hand of every civilian, and we will fight to keep this land Russia. And for that, he has now been placed on the Ukrainian kill list. The journalist, the NBC journalist.
It's very logical. Before this whole thing started, we also had some very heated exchange with the Ukrainians on Crimean issue. They were organizing events, the informal meeting of Security Council, trying to present a picture of problems in Crimea, that there are suppression of human rights, that Ukrainian language is not favored there, that Tatars are being prosecuted. We were always telling them, guys, it's very easy, just come there. Come there as more than 1 million Ukrainian tourists who were still visiting Crimea and spending some time there, posting pictures on social networks, which were absolutely to the contrary of what Ukrainian propagandists were saying. So Crimea was very peaceful, and Crimea was and is prosperous. And that's a sore point for Ukrainians. That's why they are so unhinged about the fact that this reporter went there without their consent, and he presented the truth. He presented the picture that they don't want to see in Kiev, because for them Crimea is a land where people are striving for Ukraine to take them back. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. You need to go there and to see it with your own eyes. But if you try to do it as this reporter, of course you will be prosecuted and punished, and you will be included into this kill list, Mirotvorets.
Are you on the list?
Sure. Quite a long time.
We seem to be a magnet for people who are on that list. We had Ava Bartlett, Canadian journalist. She's on the list. She's been on the show a few times. And Scott Ritter, regular friend of the show here. John Mark Dugan. And we're probably next after this
we'll
broadcast.
Probably be on there soon too. We don't have a lot of time left with you tonight, so I'd like to shift gears briefly, if we could, because in Canada today there was a standing committee of Parliament looking into foreign influence into our last two federal elections. Most of the attention is focused on China, but briefly today they again mentioned the possibility of Russian influence, and we've seen those same kinds of accusations on the U.S. side of the border, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to address that kind of rhetoric. Well,
there are a lot of claims about Russia meddling here, Russia meddling there. We all know the story of Russia meddling in U.S. elections, which turned out to be a hoax, but nobody has ever presented any excuses to us. So there are a lot of things that are being claimed, but these are, of course, not true. We have absolutely no interest in interfering in Ukrainian elections, in Canadian elections, in Canadian political system. But I wanted to highlight one thing here, which also is related to the topics that we discussed before. Very many things are explained in Canadian politics by the influence of also Ukrainian immigrants. There were several waves of immigration in Canada from Ukraine. I think most important was even before the revolution. These people just came for lands, but these people are not playing the decisive role right now. What we see is that these people who have relatives or who are ancestors from those who came from Ukrainian nationalist regions after the Second World War, they dominate the show. I just give you one example. Christy Freeland, she's now deputy prime minister. I'm not following Canadian politics, but you know that her grandfather, one of her grandfathers, was also Nazi collaborator. He was the chief editor of Nazi newspapers, hailing Hitler and all these things. And she was concealing this fact. She said as far as I understand, that he fled. He fled Western Ukraine immediately after Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. That was the official version that I read, but that's not true. So of course, people like her what would they feel towards Russia? Only animosity, and there are a lot of people like this, and this is dirty politics. It's very easy to blame Russia, keep calm and blame Russia for everything, but there are no facts, and there are only theories, and we are facing with vis-a-vis my country, this stockpiling of lies. Everybody is lying. All the politicians are trying to say that we are doing this thing or that thing. We poisoned Litvinenko, but there are no facts about this. When we are asking questions, they say it's classified. We poisoned Skripals when we are asking uncomfortable questions, and when the facts don't match, they say it's classified. We will not let you into the investigation. We allegedly poisoned Navalny, but when we are asking questions and the facts do not match, they said it's classified. We have already come to a conclusion. MH17,
same with the Nord Stream pipeline, right?
Same with the Nord Stream, everything. MH17, all these things. And people, the common people who do not have much time to get into the facts, they are saying, well, there is something about this Russia if it does so nasty things, even if some of them do not come true. It can't be about nothing. But actually it can. This is the political technology. This is the technology of stockpiling the lies, because it's not important what is happening. It's important what is being said on CNN, on other mass media, and how people are brainwashed. You see it in US elections. You see it in these, bounties for Taliban. Who has presented to us any excuses saying that people were sorry because we were inventing all these things and they turned out to be a hoax? Nobody. But people would remember these first pages of newspapers saying that Russia did it and Russia is to blame. That's the core of political technology right now, to lie as much as you can.
I know we're just about out of time. This hour has flown by. Could you spare us 5 more minutes? I've got one more question.
Okay.
I have to address this. Last week, Russia submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council calling for an investigation into the Nord Stream pipeline explosions. And I think everyone's already familiar with Cy Hirsch's reporting, so there's no need to rehash that here. But Dmitry, I just wanted to ask you about this. I want to take you back to Soviet times. Back in 1982, during the Cold War, the U.S. evidently sabotaged the Trans-Siberian pipeline, which was carrying natural gas from Russia to Western Europe. And I want to show you a brief clip here from a documentary that Canada made. This is from a CBC documentary, CBC French.
Les services secrets américains vont mettre au point un cheval de Troie pour saboter le pipeline soviétique. L'homme à l'origine de cette opération s'appelle Gus Weiss. Conseiller de Ronald Reagan, Weiss sera le cerveau de ce projet audacieux de la CIA.
Ça, c'était la technique de Gus Weiss. Silencieux et secret comme un vieux renard. Ça, c'était Gus. Il aimait les questions de renseignement, d'espionnage et aussi résoudre des problèmes complexes.
Cette opération, Gus Weiss l'a décrit dans ses notes manuscrites et son journal personnel, encore jamais publié et dont nous avons obtenu copie.
Reagan avait insisté auprès du directeur de la CIA pour qu'il trouve un stratagème, une opération clandestine. J'ai présenté mon idée à Bill Casey juste avant Noël 1981. L'idée était simple, laisser les Soviétiques obtenir les technologies qu'ils souhaitaient voler, mais bien sûr, après les avoir modifiées. Ces technologies, des ordinateurs, des logiciels, des turbines de pipeline, allaient être habilement trafiquées pour qu'elles passent les tests de contrôle. Mais une fois installées, elles allaient se détraquer sans qu'on sache pourquoi. 3 semaines plus tard, j'étais convoqué au quartier général de la CIA.
Alors le président Reagan, est-ce qu'il était au courant de cette affaire?
C'était son idée. Le concept général? Bien sûr qu'il l'approuvait. Nous faisions tout ce qui était possible pour affaiblir l'Union soviétique.
L'opération portera le nom de Deception Program. L'objectif, déstabiliser l'économie soviétique. Le résultat le plus spectaculaire, d'après Richard Allen, l'explosion du gazoduc transsibérien.
Ce fut vraiment une belle explosion.
Et qu'est-ce que vous savez là-dessus?
Rien de précis. Ce n'est pas très clair dans mes souvenirs. Mais évidemment, je sais qu'il y a eu une explosion. Je sais aussi que nous faisions tout notre possible pour fournir aux Russes des technologies pourries. C'était bien, non? Pourquoi pas?
Anyway, the documentary film was called From Canada with Love. And I don't know how familiar you are with this whole story, but basically in that
Canada
clip,
with Love? What
From
story?
Canada with Love, how about that? Because the Trojan horse, the computer chip that the CIA sent to the Soviets that caused the pipeline to go boom, was made in Ottawa, and the CIA was working with Canadian intelligence services.
(1980). Two nations are engaged in a secret cyber battle. The public remains unaware. The USSR is building the Trans-Siberian Pipeline, but lacks the automation technologies to safely control the flow of natural gas. So the KGB decides to steal it. The CIA is happy to comply, and using a Russian double agent, codenamed Farewell, supplies the Soviets with malicious software, engineered to sabotage the pipeline's control systems. The pipeline is completed, and the software is installed. In April 1982, NORAD detects a massive explosion that rocks the Siberian wilderness. It's the largest non-nuclear explosion ever seen from space. A huge section of the pipeline is destroyed, and the flow of natural gas halted. The USSR loses billions of dollars in revenue, as well as control of the European energy markets. The US government makes no official statement. 3 years later, Agent Farewell was executed.
Reagan's former White House security advisor, Richard Allen, he says the secret sabotage job was Ronald Reagan's idea. Shocking to Americans. Shocking. Which is probably why the Canadians could make that documentary and we didn't. That's why they didn't tell the American people about it until 2004. That's the year that Reagan passed away. So this big secret was revealed in two sources. The Farewell dossier, which is an authentic historical document based upon information given to the CIA by a Russian defector, codenamed Farewell, who I understand was later executed by the Soviets for this, and also revealed in the memoirs of former Reagan national security man Thomas Reed in his book, At the Abyss, An Insider's History of the Cold War. So what I wanted to ask you specifically, I know this incident, it was hidden for so long from Americans and Canadians. How much do the Russian people know about the Trans-Siberian Pipeline incident? Does the Russian government still deny that the US CIA sabotaged that pipeline? Because I know they denied it for years. They said, oh, that wasn't sabotage, that was a construction fault. And also, does Russia view this incident differently now after the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage?
Well, to be quite short, I learned about this incident from the book that you mentioned. I have it here. It's a very interesting one. There are a lot of revelations.
Yep.
Mr. Reed's book. Frankly, I didn't know about it. I really think that the majority of Russians, I may be not the less prepared one. I try to read a lot, but I was not aware of this history. So there can be two explanations. Either it was a claim for certain reasons, or it's just not disclosed for also some reasons. Maybe it will be, maybe there will be some facts disclosed in my country, but I haven't heard about any scandal coming out from this publication. But I'm 5 years here already. I might have missed something. But having said all this, of course, I reread this fragment from Mr. Reed's book, and of course, in the light of this sabotage of Nord Stream, everything is presented in totally different form, and I am absolutely sure that after some time, if not earlier, we will be able to prove, and there will be some kind of investigation that will find people who were behind this earlier, which is supposed to happen. And we will do everything that we can, including in the Security Council. Unless we do this, then in some book, maybe in 40, 50 years, of course, there will be a revelation, and people will say, yes, that was true. We did it for Russia because of this, because of that. I think that that's the trend that's always happening with American politicians. So they deny everything. Then we look into the memoir books and we understand that everything that was done is true. I am very eager, frankly, to really learn what has happened to the Skripals, because these people are now living somewhere with false identities. Their lives were ruined, especially the life of Skripal's daughter, Yulia. She had some personal life. So I'm really very sorry for her, and I would be very much eager to learn at some point of time what really happened. I know that my country is not related to it and not behind it, so I will very much be eager to learn about this secret MI6 operation, I don't know, a CIA operation, of how it really happened, to learn the details, because so far they say everything is classified. The facts do not match, but everything is classified. Don't ask us questions. We know that Russia did it. It's our conclusion, and just get away. That's what they are
Which
saying.
makes no sense. Why would Russia bomb their own pipeline when they've invested so much into
Because this
Nord
is
Stream
Russia.
1 and 2?
We're terrible, bloody Russians, people who have absolutely no logic. We can shoot ourselves in the foot just to make Americans sad and nervous about this. You know how.
Which brings me to this question. Here in Canada and in the US and the West, the media keeps talking about President Putin threatening nuclear war. And I'm very concerned that the escalation of the war might lead us to that point. Can I just get your views on this? How close are we? How, in my estimation, President Biden has been reckless in what he has been saying. The language coming from the United States in particular is just irresponsible. It's pushing us very close to the edge. Can I just get your views?
Well, I'd better not be detailed there, because I know that every time that I answer questions like this, people start speculating after that, saying that we are warmongering and saying that we will use nuclear weapons. First and foremost, we have nuclear doctrine. And it is said that we will not use this nuclear weapon first. It can be used only if there is an existential threat to Russia. And I can also quote our Dmitry Medvedev, deputy head of Security Council of the Russian Federation. He said that if the West wants to inflict defeat to Russia, they should bear in mind that Russia is a nuclear power. And then they should read the doctrine. So I would limit my comments to this. I would say that this of course, is something that we are not contemplating in terms of situation in Ukraine right now, because militarily, I think everybody understands that if not for NATO assistance, Ukraine would already be somewhere else, and that it has already squandered several armies during this 1 year. So from military point, there are absolutely no reasons for us to do anything of this kind. But again, it depends on how deep the NATO countries are going to be involved and how big threat will there be for Russia. We heard, I think everybody saw these absolutely terrifying statements of President Zelensky. Yesterday, I think he was saying that it would be time when Americans and Canadians will also send their children to this war. So he assumes that America and Canada wants to die for people from these countries wants to die and their children make their children die for Ukraine. And he would. It's a good scenario for him because he understands that he is becoming short of Ukrainians, whom he is using as a cannon fodder for Western geopolitical interests. And he is saying, guys, we're serving your interests, so bring your children there, let them fight for Ukraine because we are fighting for NATO. This is, of course, for me, it's eye-opening, and I hope that very many people in the West will see what's really happening and what are the stakes and what can be really the danger of this slippery slope where NATO is standing right now, trying to, on the one hand, help Ukraine, on the other hand, to stay kind of white and fluffy, saying that we are not involved there, we are on the side, we will not step over certain red lines. All the red lines have already been overstepped, and of course, our relations with NATO countries will never be the same, regardless of when all things ends. But
that's
again,
the part that makes me so sad, Dmitry, is I'm a late Cold War kid. Rick, we're in our 50s. I don't know how old you are, but you mind me asking? How old are you?
I'm old. I'm 56.
How old are you, Dmitry?
I'm 52. Almost
okay,
50.
So we're all contemporaries here, and we grew up in that time of perestroika, and we just wanted brotherhood. We just wanted friendship. We were so glad the Cold War was over. It was dumb the first time. Why are we doing this?
Together, and we were meaning this, singing this song and celebrating the end of the Cold War. And then we found ourselves the fringes of everything, and we have found ourselves labeled as losers, but we were not losers. We thought we were winners, and that's really big mistake of the West at that time, that they wanted to cheat on this and they didn't want to capitalize on this and really to change the world. We had the chance, and it was a big sacrifice from the part of Gorbachev. You can blame him, you can worship him, but he made his choice. He understood that the stakes were high, but he was trusting these people who deceived him and who cheated on him, and that's the tragedy of him and in my country as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just want peace. I want peace with Russia. I would like for us to stop this World War III thing before it escalates any further. The Cold War was dumb the first time, and why are we doing this again? Let's not do this. Let's just not do this.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you're saying the same thing every day at the UN, and it falls on deaf ears. I know you do, because I watch the Security Council. But Dmitry, thank you so much for your time, for making this happen. You're fascinating. I could talk to you all night. Thank you.
Yeah, and our guests are saying that they want you to come back, but when you come back for your next interview, they want you to bring President Putin with you.
I think he's a bit busy right now.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, thank you. It's
thank you
again, been a privilege.
All the best to you and to your viewers. Thank you very much.
Delightful. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.
That was a great interview.
He's just he's got so much information, so much history that could have gone on for 3 hours, but he's on a tight schedule.
Yeah, very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to have him on and pick his brain and get his perspective.
I'm of the opinion, of course, I'm pro-Russia, and I'm not ashamed to say it. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. And I think that Dmitry's one of the good guys. He's up there trying to stop this crazy thing at the UN day after day after day. And it's not just Russia. He's also trying to talk sense into the Western powers about our aggressions towards China, towards North Korea, Libya, Syria. Like I said, this could have been a 3-hour interview because I had so much I wanted to talk to him about besides the war in Ukraine. It's a big world, and there's a lot more going on than just that war, but it's threatening to blow up globally into a world war if my country, the United States, keeps this up. It just seems like we're trying to pick a fight with everybody right now. Like we're trying to pick a fight with Russia. We're trying to pick a fight with China, North Korea. All of these nations are nuclear nations. We want to start things up with Iran. Next thing you know, you've got World War III and you've got nuclear weapons involved by these superpowers. What are we doing, Rick? This is nuts.
Yeah, well, it's not us. It's just some people who happen to have the power. And they're nuts.
They're nuts. They're just plain nuts.
They are nuts.
And the people don't want this. You know, that's why you never see polling about this. Only on the 1-year anniversary did they finally take a couple of polls about the war. And boy, public opinion is not on the warmongers' side.
Yeah, well, I just mentioned that in a story out of USA Today.
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned polling, and yeah, support for the war is waning.
If it was ever really there much to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not so sure it was, but we don't know because they weren't taking polls. And I think there's a reason for that. They were just telling us, shut up and go along with it. This is our new war. And we're always at war with somebody. And, most Americans just say, it's just another little war. We do this. It's what we do. And most Americans don't put it on their list of top 5 concerns. They're more concerned about inflation, the economy, gas prices, food shortages, the price of eggs, kitchen table issues. The war in Ukraine is far, far, far from their mind, but it's never far from my mind.
Yeah. The war in Ukraine is much more serious than any of the wars that we've seen in the past. This isn't like Afghanistan. It's not Iraq. It's not Syria. It's a totally different beast.
That's
it absolutely is.
Now, those guys didn't have nukes.
Yeah, this is a war with Russia. It's not a war with Ukraine. It's not between Ukraine and Russia. It's Russia versus NATO and the United States.
And if anybody pays attention to their World War II history, you'd have to be out of your mind to want to fight Russia. Okay. Russia inflicted 80% of German casualties in World War II. And the Germans had the upper hand.
Yeah.
And Russia still kicked their ass all the way back to Berlin, baby. Do you really want to play with the Russians? Are you out of your mind? It would be in our best interest to be friends with the Russians like we were in World War II.
Yeah, well, like I said, there was no need for this war, and there's no need for it now.
No. And now they want to send your sons and your daughters over there. And Zelensky made no bones about it. Did you show the clip? Did you show Zelensky?
No, I didn't. I haven't run the clip. I mentioned
I got it right here. You want to see this?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if everybody has seen this yet, but just so you know, I'm not making this up.
That's not the right one. This is it here. There you go.
Did you find it?
Yeah, there you go.
It's just a quick 20-second clip, but boy, does he say a mouthful.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war. And they will have to fight because it's NATO that we're talking about. And they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. The U.S.
It's pretty plain, quite clear.
Real clear. Now, who made him president of the world? That's what I'd like to know.
Vogue magazine. Vogue did.
Magazine. Yeah. Everywhere this guy goes, every parliament he speaks to, every press conference, people are like, oh, mein Führer. I mean, who made this guy Führer of the world? I didn't vote for him. You didn't vote for him. We're supposed to take orders from this man? And he came to our Congress, and I was disgusted to see so many of our Congress critters and senators just keeling over, so in love with him, and Slava Ukraini, they said, and made me want to puke. Ugh. Sorry, but it made me want to puke. Didn't it make you want to puke?
I can't believe I said many months ago that we would get to this point where they would want to start sending our soldiers to fight. And now that is the first mention, real formal mention of it, informal mention maybe.
Yeah.
But that's just getting people ready. It will come. If this continues, it will happen.
That's right. That's why we have to stop it.
Yeah.
Because if Americans and Canadians go over there, Rick, they're going to die.
Yes.
They're going to get killed. The Russians will fight and kill us, and we don't want to fight the Russians. And you know, I know a lot of Russian people. They're nice people. They're good people. You know, they want to live in peace too. We all do. It's our leaders who keep getting into these messes, these wars. The military-industrial complex is always hungry, and it must be fed. And it has to be fed the bodies and the blood of young men and women who just want peace and just want to live their lives. And that's why I'm so committed to stopping the war. That's why I've pretty much dropped everything else in 2022 and devoted myself to the cause of stopping the war. I think that's more important than anything else. We can quibble about mandates and truckers and unity convoys till kingdom come, but none of that's going to matter if we end up in World War III.
This is a war we can't fight, because if we do, it will destroy everything that we know. It will be the end of the world as we know it.
Truly.
We cannot do this. It has to stop. I don't know how to stop it, because the insane people are in charge.
Yeah. I don't think there's a sane one in the bunch. As far as the American government goes, I don't know as much about the Canadian government, but from what I see, I mean, your leaders are batshit.
The reality is Canada is a puppet of the United States.
Yes.
That's just the way it is. You can go back. People don't maybe realize that, we were going to produce that Avro Aero fighter jet back in the 60s. The U.S. government didn't really want us to produce it. That's why the project really was ultimately killed. They didn't want us to have that kind of arms industry here. I think they saw that as something of almost like a threat in a way. So, and you see Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, coming out with his support for Ukraine. Honestly, folks, you want to be the Prime Minister of Canada, you don't have a choice. Right. If you are, it would take such a strong leader, and it would be so risky to stand up to the U.S. as Prime Minister of Canada and say, we're not supporting your war. We're not going to participate. We're not going to be part of it.
To withdraw from NATO even.
No, good luck with that. Because of all, we're so closely linked economically, the pressure that they would place on Canada in various ways to enforce compliance. Good luck, man. Like, seriously, good luck.
Could you imagine if they brought back the draft, right? And we really did have to send our sons and daughters over there. Yeah. Do you think that we would see conscriptions like we're seeing now in Ukraine with security services, 5 guys dressed in black, grabbing your kid off the street, dragging him, kicking and screaming as they say, you're going to go die for Ukraine. And this kid's like, no, I'm not.
Well,
I don't want to do this.
Maxime Bernier with the PPC, he has the luxury of knowing that he likely is not going to get elected prime minister. So he can take a stand and know that he's not going to have to stand up to the U.S. administration. True. But if you think you're going to be elected prime minister, like even Jagmeet Singh, NDP, all those guys, they're going to be in lockstep, because they know if they are in opposition, it'll mean sanctions and all kinds of penalties against Canadian industries. It can't happen. The U.S. would not allow it. They know it. So that is the reality. That's a little wake up call and a little taste of reality for everybody in the audience. Okay. That's why I don't agree with Pierre Poilievre's position. I clearly am against the war. I don't like what I see going on at all. I'm against it. But that's the truth of the matter. Canada is a puppet nation of the United States and NATO. We're too small. We're not powerful enough. We can't stand up economically.
Well, don't forget who your daddy is. It's not us. It's King Charles.
Well, there's that too. But it's the U.S. because we're connected, right? Yeah. It's the economy. It's everything, man. It's like it's a symbiotic relationship, and we're the little guy.
An axis of evil, if you ask me.
We're living right next door to a superpower. And, the U.S. sends $113 billion. I think we're at I don't know, maybe.
I think you guys just hit $1 billion in aid.
Right.
For Ukraine.
So it gives you there's your sense of scale. And I think we're sending 4
110
tanks.
billion versus 1 billion.
Yeah. We're sending 4 tanks. 4. Okay, they'll be blown up on Saturday.
That's right.
Right. That'll be the end of that. And I think there might be a canoe going. A canoe. Right. So,
good one.
Just that's the reality of it.
That is the reality of it. And it's just like that Trans-Siberian pipeline story. You guys did the dirty work. We barked out the orders, but it was Ottawa who made the computer chip, put the Trojan horse in it, and gave it to the Soviets so their pipeline would blow up. And isn't it interesting on the Nord Stream pipeline? Shortly before that blew up, remember the kerfuffle over the turbine that was being repaired there in Ottawa? I think there were concerns that you guys might sabotage it again.
А кто Берлин-то взял штурмом? Американцы, что ли? Англичане или французы? Красная армия. Подзабыли?
Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один прогуляюсь без тени.
А кто Берлин-то взял штурмом? Американцы, что ли? Англичане или французы? Красная армия. Подзабыли?